Sorry, I have a cold, and of all days, today is the day I had to get the cold. So pardon me and bear with me. Well, I'm going to talk about change today, change that's 168 years in the making. See, in 1787, when 55 men, our founding fathers, signed the United States Constitution, women were unacknowledged in its text, uninvited in its formulation, and unsolicited for its ratification. And about 3 hours from here, down in Seneca Falls, in 1848, two women, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, decided to change that. They found some new truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Now, this was a radical thought for that time period. It was something that was unusual because women at that point could not go to college. They had to promise obedience to their husband who could beat them. They could not earn wages, and whatever they earned had to be given to their husband. They did not have any rights on them. They could not own property. And in case of a divorce, she did not have rights to her own children. And so women decided we need to do something about it. And they decided that the first step was to get the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony joined Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and the two of them went from state to state talking about this idea, promoting this idea. And in 1906, when Susan B. Anthony died, she urged women to continue, saying, hey, listen, failure is impossible. Failure was definitely impossible, but it was difficult. Change was difficult to come by. The women were beaten, they were dragged, their heads were banged against iron beds, their skulls were smashed, women were force-fed in prison. Now, you may not know what force-fed is. Force-fed is when somebody holds you down, they chain you up. They open your jaw with steel cages so that it cannot be shut. And then they take this long tube and push it all the way down to your stomach. And then somebody takes some eggs, beaten eggs, and pours it down. And all of this just because women were asking for the right to vote. Why were men, obviously, not wanting women the right to vote? Why were they not wanting to give women the right to vote? What was it about it? Well, some of them thought that women would stop having children, that they would stop doing household chores, that a woman's place is in the house. Could I get to the next slide, please? And here, I'll take that, thank you. Some thought that women were emotional creatures incapable of making rational decisions. And some thought that women didn't want the right to vote, that their husbands voted for them and that was enough. But after 72 years of struggle, the 19th Amendment passed in the House, it passed in the Senate, and got ratified by all the 35 states. And women got the right to vote. And women came out to vote. In 1924, a third of the women came out to vote. By 1952, Eisenhower won the election on women's vote. By 1984, women had actually come out in larger numbers than men. And since then, today, women have always come out in larger numbers. Today, we have 10 million more registered female voters than we do male voters. That's pretty incredible. In fact, I don't know how many of you saw this, but there was a map that 538 did that said, if only women voted in this election, every single state would turn blue. So we're pretty powerful. After women got the right to vote, now it was time to get them elected, right? And Jeanette Rankin in 1916 became the first representative in the House from Montana. Nellie Taylor Ross became the first Wyoming governor, first female Wyoming governor. In 1932, Hattie Caraway became the first senator from Arkansas. And, well, first female senator from Arkansas. And in 1984, Geraldine Ferraro became the first vice presidential nominee. And all of us witnessed history in 2016 when Hillary Clinton became the first presidential nominee of a major party. This is historic. Whether she wins the election or not, this was history. But women have a harder time getting to the point of precedent, right? Cracking the highest glass ceiling. It's taken us 96 years from the time women got the right to vote, which is in 1920, to today, to get a first female presidential nominee. So why does that happen? Why is it that we still have only 6 out of the 50 governors that are in office today are women? Why is it that only 19% of Congress is women? Why is it that the United States is still 90th in the world for female representation in politics? Why has it taken us so long to achieve parity of any sorts, and we are not even close? A lot of it is because women are not conditioned to think about themselves as running for office, right? It's something that parents don't necessarily tell their girl child, hey, someday you will be president. And even if children are thinking, oh, I could be president, there's a lot of research that shows that by the time girls get to high school, their self-esteem has dipped so much that they don't think that they can actually represent people, that they don't think they can actually run for office. And a lot of it has to do with our schooling, our media habits. You still have women and magazines like Teen Vogue or Cosmopolitan, real simple cooking, parenting, better homes and gardens. You look at a trend, right? We are still talking to women about fashion. We're talking to them about cooking and parenting and childcare and home decor. We're not really talking to them about, hey, how do you succeed at work and be the best person possible? And how do you serve your country in the best way you can? Those kind of things are still sort of the boys' domain, the men's domain. Women who do run often face a harder time. They have a hard time getting access to donors. So a lot of the women that we speak to who have managed to make it through to governors, to senators, they all started off as educators, they started off as nurses, they started off as stay-at-home moms, and they don't often have the same course of action to deep pockets that donors have, that men can access through their networks in the boardroom, on the golf course, at boxes in football stadiums, or in frat houses. And so women still have a lot more struggle left. There are also other issues, media, sexism. You have the first name issue. So Hillary Clinton has been called Hillary since 2008 when she ran against Obama, and now in 2016 against Trump. And sure, when I bring this up, a lot of people say, but it's because when people think of Clinton, they think of Bill. Fair enough. In the Republican primary this year, there were 16 people running. Only one person was called by their first name. It was Carly. How many of you know Mr. Fiorina? Is he famous? No. But it's still Carly, right? And it's still Sarah. And it's still Michelle. And that's the problem. We continue this cycle of diminishing women straight off the bat, right? By calling them by their first name. What happened to Madam Secretary? What happened to Secretary Clinton? No, Hillary, like she's our friend, our buddy, our next door neighbor. The other problems women have is objectification. They are objectified, they are sexualized, they are demeaned. Women are, you take away power from them, right? When you start talking about their clothes, about, in this case, Hillary Clinton, the nutcracker. Sarah Palin, the blow-up doll, right? Cross party lines with your own inflatable running mate. So clearly, when you start seeing women in these kind of ways that are objectified, you're not thinking of them as somebody that you want to see represent you on the world stage. Women also have issues where we talk about their clothes, we talk about their hair, we talk about their weight. And this is not just people who hate the candidate, right? This is well-meaning people. I gave a talk on Tuesday, and I sent a picture of me giving the talk to my parents. Like, a good, nice daughter. I'm like, hey, aren't you proud of me? My mom wrote back, you need to lose 20 pounds. So the thing is that in our society, we think it's absolutely fine to comment on people's appearance, especially women's appearance, right? It's the lowest common denominator that connects us. When you want to talk about policy, you start boring people, right? But her clothes, heck, everybody can talk about Hillary's pantsuits. And so Hillary's hair clip is just one way of taking her down a peg. Kirsten Gillibrand's diet was featured in magazines. I mean, we are diminishing these women and the power of the office they hold in all many ways possible. So women have a lot harder time, going through media. Media gives men a lot more coverage. Men get a lot more positive coverage. And what women get more of is 30% more coverage on what they're wearing, what they're saying, instead of what they're saying. They get a lot more coverage on their husbands, on their children. Sarah Palin was asked, are you going to still feed your husband dinner in the evening? And how are you going to deal with Russia? And it's just hard to then take these women as seriously, because at some unconscious level, you are not thinking of them as someone that's fit for office. Take this instance. In 2008, this is 2008 when Obama got elected. Now, imagine for a minute that instead of Obama, or instead of Barack, it was Michelle who ran and won, okay? When her children are 10 and 7 in this picture. You know that the press would be all over her saying that she was a bad mom for running for office when her children were so young. And when an old woman runs, the common refrain is, who wants to look at that? And so a woman can't run when she's young. She can't run when she's old. And when Hillary Clinton found out that she was going to be a grandmother, when Chelsea Clinton announced, hey, I'm pregnant, the first time around, there were headlines, literally, I kid you not, there were headlines that said, grandmother or president? And I'm like, why are these mutually exclusive categories? Because I can tell you one thing, nobody told Mitt Romney that. He had 22 grandchildren when he ran in 2012, and nobody said, oh my God, grandfather or president? And you know who else has grandchildren? Donald Trump. Donald Trump has 8 grandchildren. How many of you knew that? Right? It's not something he talks about a lot. How often do you hear the word grandfather from his mouth? No, but I'll tell you what I have heard from his mouth. I've heard things like dogs, slobs, bimbo, pussy, right? Those are the words I've heard him say. And, Trump supporters have called Hillary Clinton a bitch. They have posters, they have t-shirts that say, Trump that bitch. They have bumper stickers that say, life's a bitch, don't vote for one. And the idea here is that we as a society have problem with the idea of powerful women, right? We are not used to them. We have had our founding fathers. We just don't know what to do with powerful women. In schools and colleges, they are called bossy, right? And we just can't really think of a word, right, for a strong, powerful, older woman. We actually don't have one, right? We have crone, we have witch, we have hag, but we don't have something strong, mature, leader for an old woman. We will talk about Nancy Pelosi's facelifts, but we won't talk about the fact that she's accomplished as much as she has, being the first female Speaker of the House. By the way, when Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House, there was no magazine that carried her on the cover. When John Boehner became the Speaker of the House, there were 5 magazines that had him on the cover in the first month alone, right? So that tells you about our media and the sexism and the bias that women face even when they get elected to office. And so the problem of having powerful archetypes is not something that other countries have had as much of. So for example, when Margaret Thatcher got elected to office in England, they had already had a powerful ruler, right? They already had their queens, they had powerful queens, the queens did well, the country did well in their reign, and people were not so worried. In India, they have fierce goddesses like Durga and Kali. In Latin American countries, Mother Mary is the key person that you pray to. She's the person who will make everything better. And so the transition of power to women was a lot easier in these countries. In the United States, we still have to come up with a great term for a woman who's a boss, like Hillary Clinton, a badass boss. And women who do get elected to office do fantastic things. You know, our Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, for example, has championed the cause of sexual assault in the military. They've championed causes of healthcare, childcare, emergency contraception, a whole bunch of things that men were overlooking. And we need more women to run. We need more women to lead. We need you to think about running. We need you to think about leading us. And today, and this November on Tuesday, I want you to think about all these powerful women who have got us here so far. I want you to think about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony, and Carrie Chapman Catt, and Alice Paul, all of those women who suffered through beatings and all sorts of horrible things so that we could get the right to vote. And I'll tell you what, I have a feeling that if Trump knew any of those women, he'd call them nasty women. I'm pretty certain of it. And guess what? Nasty women have got us the right to vote. Nasty women vote, and nasty women will lead. Thank you.